hear me. The first of the recordings today, that's today's date that I've got here, but recording A, which is 2 recordings back, not the last one, but the one before, is clearly inaccurate. In that it's not at all clear that this is applicable to all the categories of people that are relevant to this discourse. The secular person doesn't have in his consciousness a reality of life eternal. Therefore, if he loves the person that rescues him as himself, he literally wants to care for that person as himself. How does he care for himself? Well, probably all the indulgences of the world. Not particularly spiritual content at all. Do you see? Whereas if the enlightened person is rescued by someone, well, the enlightened person is defined as one who trusts he has life eternal. He wants to give life eternal to the one that's rescued him. And if he loves that one as himself, well, himself is one that has life eternal and values that. So he wants the person that rescued him to have life eternal that he values. Secular person may not value life eternal, but just today's pleasures in the extreme. You know what I mean? So who we love, who we are best focusing our love on, and in the way that we are to do it, is according to who we are. Now, it's not that we're not to love others at all. We are sent into the world knowing that these people around us in the world are loved and cared for of God. It's just that they don't really seem to realize it and are not putting God first. They're not putting God first because they don't probably see God in the favourable light. They've got some religious view of God that's, quite honestly, either scaring them off or just disappointing them, something chronic. So we're there to tell them the good news, that they can enter into this relationship of understanding God as their dad, not some fearful, awesome war god of genocide and so on. It's not a fear relationship, it's a love relationship. Surely they will hear that. And you would think they all would, but they don't until life has dealt them such a bad hand from the way they're living that they desperately look for answers, start to have ears to hear. That's the reality of their dilemma, isn't it? But the dilemma itself is God-given, because God knows that life eternal is infinite compensation for transitory distress. Not much consolation when you're actually in the distress, especially if you don't really believe it. But the distress does cause you to long for that which is better. And that's the way out, because you're starting to value anything that brings goodness. It's something like that. I don't mean I've got it all. I've just got enough. Enough, it's enough. What's enough to come to life eternal? To know, to trust rather, that God is your dad, your heavenly dad. That's enough, according to John 17, to set you in the right direction. You will come to know God, and that means you come to have life eternal. That's the drift of John 17. Come to bless you. Thank you, Dad. Of course, anyone loving anyone is practicing love. And love is at the essence of the story in that sense. They're practicing love towards, if the secular person's practicing love towards the one that's rescued them, they will be in fellowship with that person. They'll be influenced by that person. Goodness, that person must have something godly about them, because he rescued them without even knowing them. Do you see, they'll be going in the right direction, even though they're showering like Peter, saying, "Oh no, surely this shouldn't be unto you, Jesus." Now Jesus comes back in the story with something pretty harsh. "Get behind me, Satan." You know, his ways are not God's ways. But Peter is doing what's right. He's loving in the way that he understands love to be. It's just that he's not enlightened yet. He hasn't got his priorities right. That it's life eternal that's the real treasure. Not the transitory indulgences of this world that bring death. Or rather, in an Eastern way, endless recurrence of transitory life. Some very cycles of unhappy change and that are good, and this amazing mixture that we have in the world of the transitory universe. So we should see, ideally, the secular world made up of persons who have experienced the kindness of their parents and other people in rescuing them from what would otherwise be dire circumstances. Friendship bonds between them that corporately could make a good society, and gives them experience in loving, being a loving person, being favourably disposed to more than simply oneself. They experience then this expansion of self. It's moving in the right direction, isn't it? They will, in worldly terms, tend to prosper, live long upon the earth, because they're a unit with the people that they love. They will then value bigger units of such cooperation. We have the foundation of a society being built. They probably still worship their ancestors, but I mean, that's understandable, isn't it? They start to idolize the wisdom of those that have gone before. because it seems to be that wisdom that's keeping them from some of the difficulties of life. And then to care for each other and value that care and cooperation. They start to know what their God is because they've received love in their family. The next step is to see God as a perfect parent, which means to them loving, concerned about their welfare, and ultimately able to give life eternal. It's a natural progression from isolated self to heavenly host. Membership. The family of God. Thank you, Dad.